Hello and welcome. Especially thank you for joining what some call the graveyard shift. We know you're tired, we know you've heard a lot, so maybe I wanted to start with a quick poll. I just learned recently something about all of our panelists, or conversationists rather, and myself, and I was hoping we could get some help. So please raise your hand and leave it raised if this is your first time at the Reykjavik Global Forum. All right, for those of you who didn't raise it, including our conversationists, please reach out to us with tips and recommendations, including all of us up here in the, I thought it was a circle, I see it's a rectangle now. Any tips and recommendations that you have for us and for those who raised their hands. We still have one more day that we can take advantage of, and so if there are any tweaks or tips that you have for us, please let us know, including for those of you who are local, things that we should do. All right, welcome to our conversation. The original topic, or rather title for this was WTF, but the Reykjavik Global Forum advised against that title. But let's acknowledge the world is a dumpster fire. It's a very dire context in which we're operating. And so maybe before we jump deep into that, I want to do a rapid fire question. Luciana, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Aparna, group dinner or room service?
Room service.
One of those. And Anna, our, I think, most traveled conversationist, window or aisle seat?
Window.
All right. So now that you know a little bit more about our conversationists, as we heard maybe two conversations ago, the latest Reykjavik Index, we're not doing well on gender equality. And in fact, we're stuck in the lowest score that the index has registered since it began its research. We hear that young people are becoming less progressive. We know that anti-gender movements are growing strong and are collaborating and strengthening, and there's a gender backlash. And yet, I have the privilege of speaking with amazing leaders like those that join us today. And I have to say, every time I leave those conversations, I leave hopeful, I leave excited, and I leave energized. And it's quite different from sort of the scenario that we should react to. And so that's our hope for you today, that you leave with those same feelings. And we also wanted to flip a little bit the geographic axis. We know Iceland tops all of the scores on gender equality, but the countries represented here today have seen it all. We've been through colonialism, dictatorships, civil wars, closing of civic space. So we might have some tips for those of you who might be experiencing this for the first time. So let's listen to those stories. And Luciana, let's begin our trip with Brazil. In Brazil, you've identified a historic opportunity of changing the face of the judiciary. Just for those who are listening in, for example, there's only one Supreme Court justice right now who's a woman, and she's white. And historically, you've only had 3 in total, all of them white women. So tell us about this historic opportunity and what you and your organization, JUSTA, is doing about it.
Okay, good afternoon to you all. It's a pleasure to be here, seated with these great women. So I'd like to start by sharing a number. Last year alone, more than 39 million new cases were presented to Brazilian judicial system, which means that much of our democratic experience is shaped by judicial decisions. And I must say that in Brazil, a person becomes a judge by passing public exams, and it's a lifetime position. In fact, once you get there, you stay until you turn 75, when retirement becomes mandatory. It happens that positions of power reached by promotion are also lifetime positions, and men haven't been there forever. In the last decades, women have succeeded entering the system. Almost 40% of Brazilian judges are now women, but they are far from power positions. Despite all that, we have a great window opportunity. In the next 5 years, we are going to face a generation change with many men, 75 years old men, stepping down. We have mapped more than 700 positions of power that will be soon renewed. And what we have been working on is to ensure that women can compete on equal terms with real chances to win. And I truly hope that in 5 years I can come back and celebrate with you all a new judiciary system in Brazil, and that we can say that it's more equal in not only in gender, but also in race perspective.
Thank you, Lu. Aparna.
Thank you for having me here. And I agree with Lou that representation is very important. However, I do think it's necessary, not sufficient. And since we are talking of and from the global south, I want to take an analogy from a shared experience, that of colonialism. Having more colonized folks in the colonial government is never going to be a substitute for independence. It's also not just going to get us there just by having more folks. Drawing from that analogy, we say in our initiative that having a seat at the table is not enough. It won't work if your mic is muted. Right? Just because we have more women at the table, if those women don't have power, voice, and agency to change the terms of the conversation, that won't lead to transformational change that lifts all women, right? So that it's not just about individual women, it's about all women. And so we need to unmute that mic. And in our initiative, which is looking at increasing women's representation in leadership in law, in India, and especially in the litigation profession, the question we are asking is, who counts and what is counted by the profession as a leader? We want to change the terms of that debate. So the traits associated with leadership in the legal profession are very masculine coded, aggressive, confident, overconfident, blustering, argumentative, and being visible in the courtroom. But women end up doing lots of what you could think of as back-end work, very important work, but back-end work not as visible, which is drafting, briefing, client care. And so the question that we are asking is, and we want our policymakers to ask, is why aren't these abilities seen as leadership traits? Can we get policies to recognize and reward this work as important legal work and associated skills as important leadership skills? So that for us is that opportunity in adversity. Clearly, if we are in adverse situations, business as usual is not working. And we have the opportunity to fundamentally reimagine our structures of leadership so that we can expand our collective horizon of possibilities.
Well, thank you so much, Aparna. I'm going, Alfonsina, if you don't mind, to take the point of Aparna to explain, when we believe, at least from the care agenda, in this case from the Global Alliance for Care, that when imagination meets strategy, opportunity is born. It's kind of like a momentum that the care agenda is living. First of all, thanks to the women leadership who for decades fought from the feminist movement to the labor movement to the persons with disabilities to put the support agenda also on the table, that they were really bringing the evidence and building the case to recognize unpaid care work, to value it, to redistribute it, to recognize it, to represent it. So that's a women leadership that is really solid. And it's kind of the past, but we are bringing it with us always, no? The other women leadership I wanted to mention that is helping us to reimagining in this context of adversity, it's the women leadership during COVID. 19 that gave visibility to care workers and put a face to nurses, to teachers, to domestic workers. And the face was mainly a woman, because that's the women are the ones that, doing those jobs. So that's another women leadership that I wanted to mention in terms of how we are reimagining a different society in this context. And it's a caring society. It's a transformative vision in which care is at the center. It's at the center because it's recognized as need, as work, as right, as public good. It's a shared responsibility. We believe on that. And so there is a momentum right now. And it's thanks to all that work, to the visibility. But now it's not anymore about why care should be at the center. It's about how we put care at the center and how we ensure that the care policies are really redistributing, reducing care work for women all over the world. And then we found other women leadership at the national level, putting together care policies, especially in Latin America, where we have some countries really pushing for national care policies. We have a strong feminist local movement that are putting care service at the center, but from a really imagination, DNA. It's the case, for example, of Mexico City with Utopias, but also Bogota with the care blocks. And with this, perhaps I will end, no? But again, if you put imagination and you put a strategy together, we can go farther, even if we know it's a long path. And that's what happened in Bogota, for example. So the mayor, a woman at that time, during COVID, an urban planner, decided to bring the care at the center to the urban planning strategy of the city. Really smart, because it's the urban plan of any city, it's something that is long-term transformation of a city. So that you transform the knowledge to long-term legacy, doing it, for example, through urban planning, that it was never thought before. So, and she brought not only women to the table, but she also brought poverty. She brought insecurity, because those care blocks that she imagined and created in only 3 years are basically in those neighbors where women didn't have the possibility to have the proximity of a health center or education center. They had such a time poverty that it was difficult for them to go outside of that circle. And the care blocks is allowing to do that in a really imaginative way. For example, putting laundries in those care blocks, because women were using 4 hours per day to go to fetch water, to wash, to dry. Those 4 hours now, they can just use it for free time, for pursuing a career, because also there are professionals taking care of their children or their elders in that care blocks. So I'm just, this women leadership as an opportunity. I think it's really important that we keep hoping about examples all over the world happening. In Nairobi, in some markets, there are, care infrastructure for the women that are there every day selling, because they didn't have the opportunity to leave their children or, again, their elders in any other space. But now there is that innovation, that imagination of a caring society that is completely different of what we have right now. So thank you so much.
There are so many threads that I want to pull on, but I'll choose only 2, which I believe you've all mentioned. One of them you just brought up, Anna, which is the challenge of sustainability. Right? We've seen, particularly in the United States, for example, how in very short amount of time, institutions, laws, policies can be broken down and completely ignored. What are some of the elements that you're thinking of in terms of the challenges of sustainability, but also some of the opportunities that this might bring? And if you can also bring in another element, which I heard, which all of you mentioned. For example, Lou, you talked about there's 40% of women already in the judiciary, but there's a pipeline issue for them reaching powerful positions. What are those challenges? How are they linked to these sustainability issues? And what are you hoping for us to celebrate in 5 years when we come back?
Okay, well, the sustainability of this change is guaranteed as all this position is lifetime position. So that's why we have to fight for that right now. because it's going to change the face of the next 40 years. So it's absolutely necessary that we do this right now. And some changes have already begun. New rules were approved to guarantee gender equality in promotion process, and the affirmative policies that we were able to approve already says that will be remain in place until equality is reached. So it's a good step. But the main challenge already are to expand these new rules to all the system, to make equality in judiciary not just a judiciary issue, but part of a national agenda of democratic issues, because we are not talking about only judiciary when we have 39 million new cases every year. And to support women who are now ready to compete, to do so with real chance to win. And one practical challenge that we have is the support to make all this happen in these 5 years. So it's great to be here and can talk to everybody that we can bring together our efforts to make it real.
You spoke about, you used the metaphor of the pipeline. We all know that that pipeline is leaky. Women leave midway just as they're beginning to rise. And there are many strategies that we can use to repair the pipeline. But what if we should really dismantle it and rebuild a new pipeline, a more inclusive pipeline? I'm really running with a metaphor here. But that's just to say that it can be reimagined new structures. I think that is how we build in resilience, not by doing patchwork with the old structure. And so to give you an example from our initiative, a marker of success in litigation in India is going independent, which means setting up your own independent chamber, litigation chamber. And that's how it's always been done in this very male-dominated profession, and that is how women today measure their own success. But clearly there are a range of structural barriers for women to go independent in this way. And so the question again that we are asking is, can we reimagine a new model of success? Can we, one which is focused not on independence, but collectivization, one which is focused on working in collective spaces so that you can collectively address these structural barriers. So the idea is not that working to dismantle structural barriers is a problem. Of course, that is needed. But can we also build new structures altogether that are, from the very beginning, again, fundamentally imagined as more inclusive, and creating, therefore, that constituency for all women to rise, rather than for individual women to rise through the pipeline?
Yeah, and basically, I mean, the Global Alliance for Care was, co-convened in 2021 by the government of Mexico and UN Women. So it's been 4 years. In those 4 years, we've seen 300 members joining the alliance, and it's a multi-stakeholder, multi-sectorial, multi-level, really open and flexible platform. And it's not bringing duplication. It's bringing the added value of the collective action and the collective intelligence. And in not duplicating, you can accelerate, and that's a way that we believe change and transformation can happen, so that every member keeps pushing individually in their own strategy, and when they come to the alliance, it's because we have defined how to accelerate things. And it can be accelerating at the legislation level. For example, the women of Latin America, those feminists and also grassroots organizations, international organizations, the Economic Commission of the Latin America and the Caribbean, they imagined that they wanted to care to be recognized as right, and they made the case in the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. And the Inter-American Court, just on 7th of August, published that advisory opinion. And that advisory opinion was positive, was recognizing that care was a right. Any person should have the right to receive care or to give care. That's a huge step in the care agenda. But that's because some people were imagining and putting together this collective action and this multidimensional strategic tactic approach that you can do better together in an alliance, and even in an alliance or of alliances, that I think also the context, the momentum require us to be imaginative in how we connect to other alliances and movements and how we do this cross-sectoral movement.
I think what we've heard today is that there's a need for leadership, diverse leadership from all levels, from grassroots all the way to powerful women, to do essentially three things: set up the agenda, make sure that these topics are visible and known. We need funding for these as well, either public funding if this is a public policy issue, or from the private market. I know many of you from the private sector are here. We need your help. And also for implementation. These things can end up in a sort of dead letter, if you will, on paper. We need one of the big challenges to make sure that this becomes a lived reality for women. I can't believe we've run out of time, but we are on time. So thank you very much to our conversationists, and thank you all for joining us.